Welcome to the 111th episode of the Flipped Learning Network podcast. I'm your host, Roy Cockrum, along with my co-host, Joan Brown. Today we have on the show Matt Miller. Matt, could you tell us what it is that you do?
Sure. I am a high school Spanish teacher, and I teach at a little school called Turkey Run High School. It's in Marshall, Indiana, which is in west central Indiana. And to get there today, here in November, while we're taping this, we had to drive through some ice and some snow, which is not very typical in Indiana in the middle of November. But you take what you get. So I've been teaching Spanish for about 10 years and have been in, this is my first year with a class full of Chromebooks. So as far as technology goes, it was kind of like Christmas come in July when they delivered those. So I'm excited to be here.
Hey, welcome.
And so the reason I wanted to bring Matt on, there's obviously anybody on Twitter has seen a lot of TLAP tweets, Teach Like a Pirate tweets, and that's certainly been a popular topic of discussion for a lot of different conferences and podcasts and things like that. But Matt just produced what he calls the Digital Pirate guide, and it's a free download from his website. That we'll talk a little bit more about that. But tell us a little bit about this Digital Pirate guide.
Okay, well, I very first got introduced to Dave Burgess and the whole concept of Teach Like a Pirate. Actually, it was about a year ago or so. It was Teach Like a Pirate was a birthday gift from my sister, and so I got a chance to sort of flip through that a little bit. And then summer hit, and I actually got to see Dave Burgess 2 times in Indiana over the summer at a couple of e-learning conferences. We've got a ton of those here in Indiana over the summer, which is great. And he was at 2 of them, and I've got to say, if anybody listening to this gets an opportunity to see Dave Burgess live, take that opportunity. It's an experience to say the least. This man's energy and enthusiasm and passion, it's just off the charts. And so I got to watch him and finish the book, and I'm thinking, man, I love my technology. I integrate it into class whenever possible. Started doing that from the very beginning of my teaching career, and being the sort of techie-minded person, I start thinking, wow, some of these hooks that he talks about, these hooks to hook your students in and to engage them in class, and I'm starting to think, man, a lot of these could go really well with some of the tech tools that I use. And so, I started thinking about his board message hook, where he talks about writing something compelling on the board to start some buzz before class. And I thought, I don't have to write that on the board with a dry erase marker. I could make a Powtoon video that could get people's minds kind of going, and play that and maybe loop it or play it a couple times before class starts, and then the buzz starts before class even gets going. And so he talks about his magic and the magic and amazing hook. And I'm thinking, with educational technology these days, there's all sorts of stuff that kind of feels like magic. So I was thinking about, the first thing that popped in my head there was Aurasma. You've got augmented reality, and gosh, some of the things that you can do with Aurasma almost feel like magic. And I've shown numerous people the trick, if you've never done this with Aurasma, where if you scan the back of a $1 bill and it brings up the this video that some artist just did a phenomenal job with it, where it turns it into this John F. Kennedy speech about going to the moon, and it's amazing. If you've never tried it, you've got to, just because it does feel a little bit like magic. And so those were some of the thoughts that I started having, and I thought, with the community around my blog, Ditch That Textbook, with a community around that loves technology and creative teaching. And I thought this is just a perfect fit for them. So I started kind of making a list of, here are some of the hooks, here are some of the tools that I use in class, and how you can put them together into these activities. And I mean, one thing led to another, and it became an ebook. And so I put it out there in a blog post and offered it to my readers. Anybody that comes to the website, to the Ditch That Textbook blog, can come and check it out.
Well, and I did notice when I read Teach Like a Pirate, he doesn't mention technology, and it's not that he's anti-technology; he just doesn't really talk about it. And
right.
I thought quite a bit about that when I was reading it. And so it seems you've taken a lot of the good ideas that he has and put that digital twist on it, or that digital component into it.
Yeah, and if you read the book, you'll see. I think just like you said, it's not that he's anti-technology, but he did a lot of things without using technology. I haven't gotten to hear specifically from him if it's a lack of it, or just wanting to do things a different way, or what. But almost all of his examples, which are phenomenal examples of ways to engage kids in the classroom, almost all of them revolve around experiences in the class that a lot of times don't use technology. And so that was, I thought, maybe my twist that I could put on this great work that he's put out.
I like that you mentioned Erasmus. I just changed directions a little bit. I'm doing a project with another 5th grade teacher on Erasmus, and we were both kind of frustrated because it's not a simple thing to do. It seems simple, but it's not. And I just got an email from him because I sent him an Erasmus, an Aura today, and said, "Try it." Just got an email from him that says it worked, and it took a little while.
Which is cause for celebration, because it doesn't always work that easily.
But yeah, that dollar bill one is a great example, and it always seems to work for me when I need to show people Erasmus. So.
Yeah, whenever I'm trying to demonstrate it in a conference, it seems that something always goes wrong. It's one of those, things where whenever you practice it before, it's fine, and then it blows up in your face. So.
Yeah.
But you can always assure them that it's really, really cool, right? You just keep saying that.
Yeah. This is neat. I know you can't see it, but this is really, really neat.
And the dollar bill's my fallback when it's like when I try to show them a video or something that I've created, they're just like, I'm like, okay, I don't know why it's not working. Here, let me get $1 out of my wallet. I know that'll work.
Yeah, exactly. There's a presentation I did on iPad apps, and I had the whole thing videoed, so I didn't even have to worry about the connection and all of that. And so, I mean, that's kind of cheating because it's not actually using it live, but it got the job done.
We could do a whole thing on presentations, but Matt, I was going to ask you a little bit about some of the tools that you mentioned in the book, because you said you're a Spanish teacher.
Yes.
And one of the tools you mentioned is Khan Academy. Do they have a Spanish course?
Khan Academy does not have anything for Spanish, actually. I'm sort of amazed at how they've grown and the things that they've done and all the different areas that they've branched out to. But no, I've looked. I'd love to get something like that my students can follow. And thankfully there are a couple of really good things that take that same Khan Academy approach and put it towards world language. And I don't know if either of you have heard of Duolingo before. That's like a classroom staple whenever my students have extra time to do, just to kill, because Duolingo it's kind of like, it's almost like a free Rosetta Stone, in my opinion, as a world languages teacher. So, but no Spanish stuff on Khan Academy, as far as I know, at least.
All right. What are some of the other ones that are your favorites? What do you use on a regular basis in the class?
Oh, let's see. I have used. I'm kind of scanning through the list here. One of my favorites that I always think is one of the most overlooked apps that you can use on a device in the classroom is just the camera app. there's so much that you can do just by taking pictures and videos and just showing them to students. So I actually have I have two of them on here. One uses the Safari hook, which is one of my that's kind of one of my fallback hooks in the whole Teach Like a Pirate concept, is just to get kids out of the classroom. One of the questions asked in the book with the Safari hook is, where's the best place on your campus to deliver this message that you want to deliver? Is it your classroom? If it is, you might as well just stay there. But if there's someplace else, take them there. And so on a semi-regular basis, if I ever feel like my students are, they're just starting to zone out and they need a change of pace, it's like one of those things where their eyes glaze over and whatever I'm about to say here, it really doesn't matter what I'm going to say, so I might as well do something else. And so, we grab the iPads in my classroom, or we'll have them get out their devices, and I'll say, okay, here's what we're working on right now. Go find some pictures around the school, and thankfully I have good, responsible high school kids that are able to do this, and they will actually come back to my class in 5 or 10 minutes, whatever I give them, and we come back and we can describe that, or we'll have somebody take one of the pictures and describe it in Spanish, and we'll see if we can guess what they're talking about. You can pull all those pictures together and put them in, put them on a Google site, or you can share them in 100 different ways, really. That's one of the things that I like to do with that. And then another one that I love to use, I mean, it's real simple, but it just works every single time, is Kahoot. If anybody hasn't gotten a chance to use Kahoot, I mean, that's just like classroom gold, in my opinion, because it turns your classroom into pretty much like a game show. And whoever's quickest on the buzzer with the correct answer gets more points, and it tallies it up, and it's got a running leaderboard, and there's sound effects, and you can very easily set up your own Kahoot game shows that you can have in class. And I just all the time have kids begging and begging and begging and begging to play Kahoot. They have decided, even though I didn't decide this, I don't know where this came from, but they've decided that Fridays are Kahoot days, and they're really trying to convince me of this, and that every Friday we need to play Kahoot, and sometimes they convince me of it. So those really are some of my favorite ones, and now that I look over at the list, there's one more that I think is cool, is the Gone Google Story Builder. And for anybody that hasn't seen that one before, it's just this neat little web app where you can create a video of people typing things onto a Google document. And so there's kind of like a storytelling component you can do there. And Dave talks in his book, and Teach Like a Pirate, about it's the mime hook. And he says if there's something that you can do without words, if you can just do it with printed text, or displaying text somehow, and that's a really neat way to incorporate technology into that hook too. Sorry, you got me going on something that I'm excited about. So.
I absolutely love the Google Story Builder. But I was going to say, they do the trailer with Daryl Hall and John Oates typing back and forth. Have you all seen that?
I haven't.
Where they're trying to correct each other's lyrics, and eventually they get to man-eater. She's a man-eater. It's like an ad. It's one of Google's ads for that particular product. It's really pretty cute.
Because they had the search story builder, and they took that away, and then brought back this new one, and so I'm glad they brought this one back.
Right. And I was laughing as you were saying. I presented Kahoot today, and one of the things we found out is they have a video lobby. So when you're talking about your hook, when the kids come in, there can be a video showing right before you're playing the game, and they're hooked because they're already fascinated by the video. So you said also, I think in the book about Powtoons, is one of the ways to do that, is just kind of building both together.
Right, yeah, it kind of combines two of those. And I've found, at least in my classroom, if you can take some of these engagement hooks and you can compound them, kind of layer them, I mean, the experience that your kids get, it's, Dave Burgess talks in his book about, he said, if students didn't have to be in your classroom, would you be teaching to an empty room? And that one, the first time I heard him speak, that one just really settled into my mind. And I think whenever you can get some of these things and you can layer them and really create an experience instead of teach a lesson, then I think that's really powerful stuff.
Well, I noticed one of yours is YouTube. I saw a tweet the other day that said, if you're having trouble getting your students' attention, pull up a YouTube video and they'll immediately be engaged.
Yes, yes, I agree. In fact, today in my Spanish classes, I did that very same thing. We were just practicing some sentences, changing verbs. I mean, typical Spanish class stuff. And I put up a picture of the hot dog eating contest that they have. I think it's on Long Island or something, which is kind of like fascinating and appalling all at the same time. And some of them hadn't seen it, so I thought, okay, I'm just going to pull up a quick YouTube video and I'll show them 30 seconds of people gorging themselves with these Nathan's hot dogs and dunking them in water and everything. And I mean, it hammered the point home. And even though that part didn't specifically teach them anything about Spanish, I got everybody back just like that.
Every once in a while, we would pull back in with the moonwalk contest in class. I mean, whenever they had the glazed over look, it was like, everyone stand up. Who does the best moonwalk? Prove it.
Exactly.
My kids love the Dancing with Matt video, and so anytime I was having trouble getting them into something, I'd say, let's watch the Dancing with Matt video, and then they'd immediately, like after that, be ready to go. I don't know what it was about that particular video, but a ton of my kids loved it. I mean, I liked the video, but I don't know why they were so into it. But
hey, whatever works, right?
Yeah, it's, so.
Yeah.
And then you've got.
I wanted to go kind of on the opposite end of this, because your book is throw out the curriculum and design your own, basically. Mm-hmm. Have you had any pushback from that, as far as anybody who wants you to teach the core, or they want you to use a particular textbook?
I get this question on a fairly regular basis, and the honest answer, it would be a better story if I said, yeah, I had this pack full of parents, and they came in, and they had their books, and they were shaking them in my face, and they were saying, you will use this, and I was able to make them realize the potential of teaching without textbooks, and I was able to settle the masses, but it really wasn't that impressive. I've had very little pushback about this, and I think the great thing about it is, I've had very supportive administrations. Now, granted, I've had, I think, 7 principals in my 10+ years of teaching, so it's changed a lot. But thankfully, each time somebody comes in, they recognize what I'm trying to do. And honestly, I think the administration and the parents and the students all just want the best education for their kids, regardless of how it's delivered. They want relevant instruction, and they want the relationships, and they want their kids in my class to be able to come away and speak some Spanish. And for me, in this particular content area, lots of practice in conversational Spanish is important. And for me, that meant getting away from the textbook, to the point that there was one of those days where it just kind of dawned on me, and I'm going, whenever they introduce something new in the textbook, I'm explaining it in my own way anyway that seems to click with the kids better, and the activities are shallow and horrible. So I'm making my own activities up. We're doing our own things in class, and it eventually just clicked. And the very first time I did it, I asked a couple weeks in, I said, does anybody miss the textbooks? I had like one kid. She really liked the textbook. I think it was almost like a security blanket thing, I think, for her, Like, you got to have something in your hands. But nobody else really did. And I just started teaching at a new school. This is my 4th year there. And my very first day there, I had to explain to the kids, I've got all these textbooks, but they're just going to stay. It's like they're in those cabinets back in the back of the classroom. Said if I could lock them in so they couldn't escape, I would. But I can't, for some reason, I can't lock them in there. And even when I came over and started teaching there, it was the same thing. And I think my sort of technology-based textbook, because all I do is I've created this website where I put links to Google Documents where I explain content, the explanations that they need. We do a lot of practicing on different websites. I love using Today's Meet because I can ask a quick question, they could type the answer, and I can see immediately. I mean, just the simplicity of it, I love it. So I do a lot of practicing there, and we do multimedia stuff and all of that, and nobody seems to miss the textbooks. This year was textbook adoption year. Actually, last year was for world languages, and I just didn't adopt new textbooks. And I think my principal kind of loves me for that because of the effect on the budget.
That's what I was thinking, that they would be thrilled if there was no more purchasing of the textbook, because we are sort of beholden to some companies
Yes.
because of that, and we really should probably break away. You think in terms of if there were more folks like you out there, then we would have fewer monopolies going on. But on the other side, I know teachers that would turn to me and they'd say, yeah, that's well and good for Matt Miller because he's super creative and he's got the ability to do all this because he knows a lot about technology. And then they're like, whoa me, I don't think I can do that. And that's why I need a textbook. So, you do have those that don't have the security that make them a little uncomfortable with the thought.
That's true, yeah. I'm kind of biased towards my own viewpoint on this, of course. But, I kind of feel like as teachers, we know our content really, really well. We know what the kids need to know. We know what the easy things are to teach and the hard things are to teach and the most engaging things are. And the textbook companies don't understand our kids like we do. Their product that they put out, especially if you go on a 4 or 5 year textbook adoption cycle, sometimes is obsolete the moment that it comes out. In some instances, at least, or at least things have changed, and I just feel like there's some really simple ways to get away from that to teach what it is that that your kids need to know. And my whole philosophy of ditch that textbook doesn't mean that I hate textbooks, which I think a lot of people probably understand, and it also doesn't mean that I think we need to get rid of them 100%. If you're teaching a literature class, you have to read the stories somewhere, so there've got to be places to get some of that, but I just fear that so many teachers, and I was one of them, my first few years out, I just became enamored with the idea of teaching from the textbook and going from the activities, and a lot of that stuff's easy to grade and it takes less preparation to just pull it straight out of the textbook, but I understand why people do that, but for me, I kind of felt like my kids deserved better than something that was canned and put together by Pearson or Holt or something off in their offices that are hundreds or thousands of miles away from my classroom.
Well, we had not, and I taught English, so and I never used the textbook. And last year, when we had all these snow days to make up, we had one of our makeup days was the day before spring break.
Oh, great!
and half my kids weren't there. I hadn't planned on being there, so I didn't have any kind of plans in my unit or anything like that. So I just said, okay, we'll just pull out the textbook today. We'll read a short story, answer a few questions, move on. When I told the kids to get their textbook, they were like, "You've got a textbook?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's over there in the corner, And so the kids pulled out their textbooks, and we're reading along, and I'm kind of playing along. I'm just like reading the questions in the columns on the side, and reading exactly what it says word for word. It says, "Now ask your students this."
What a good little teacher you were to do that.
and then one of my students just starts laughing, and I'm like, "Why are you laughing?" And she's like, "These questions are so ridiculous." She's like, "I don't even need to read the story to answer them." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm glad you guys realize that." And then the whole rest of the class period, we just made fun of the textbook.
I love that. That's so great. Even as a beginning teacher, when I didn't know any better, I looked at the questions and the activities, and they're like, they say something really dry like, have students get together in pairs and ask each other about their pets. I'm like, really? You guys are paid to make this, to come up with these questions? This is the best you can do? Have you ever been in a classroom? Have you ever tried to get 17 teenagers to talk about their pets with each other, with people that they may or may not want to really talk to? Have you really done that before?
Hey, my favorite, when I taught history, I actually offered a prize for anyone who could find a inaccuracy in the textbook.
Mm-hmm.
And we found 3 in the year. It was wonderful.
Wow, that's great.
I know.
Well, and then Joan, back to your point, I did a flipped learning beginning flipped classroom presentation a couple weeks back, and one thing I did talk about was you have to kind of train kids how to take notes on a video. They don't have that experience yet.
Right.
And a woman sitting up in the front asked, "Do you teach your kids how to take notes out of a textbook?" And I just was kind of, I guess, my kids don't use a textbook, so no, I don't teach them that. But I said, certainly they'll learn good note-taking skills, but I was just dumbfounded that she was so concerned about teaching her kids how to read a textbook. And,
yeah, and she had no idea what she was stepping into when she asked that question, did she?
Right. So I like, one of my favorite tools is WeVideo that you put in there. And I love WeVideo because it's not template driven the same way like an iMovie is or something like that, and it's also more collaborative, and it goes directly into your Google Drive. So, I don't know how many times kids will do iMovie projects and then say, "How can I get it to you?"
Yeah.
Well, they never had that problem with WeVideo. Talk a little bit about the project you talked about with WeVideo.
Let's see. The one with, I can think off the top of my head of things that we've done in class. Okay, this was the backwards hook. Now I've got to look it up to see exactly what I wrote about this. Okay, you caught me, Troy. All right, so this one.
Go tomorrow, just out of the, just while I give you time to think, and we're actually doing book trailers. And the one thing I told the kids was, really, I don't mind if you use iMovie. Yes, you can use a template, but your video will look exactly like the kids from last year and the year before and the year before. And I said, nothing's bad about the templates. It's just I'd like you to be more creative. And so when you start showing them WeVideo themes, their minds wander because they're like, that's amazing how it can, change the whole feeling of something.
Yeah.
All right, now that I've given that intro.
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate that. There you go. Okay, so the idea here in this activity in the book, it uses the backwards hook. And the idea behind the backwards hook is to start with the end. And I always think of, the movies or the TV shows. I think of like a CSI or some sort of crime type show where they show just this devastation or this crime scene, and you're going, wow, what in the world? Or you see, my wife and I have started watching Scorpion on CBS. I love that show, and there's one that aired not too long ago where all of the members of that team were in just this ridiculous situation, and they had, one of them had a huge stain on his shirt, and another one had some ridiculous shirt, and I mean, something crazy had just happened. We had no idea what it was. And they were basically using the backwards hook that Dave Burgess talks about in his book, is to start at the end and let people go, wow, how in the world did that happen? And so I think WeVideo is a perfect way to integrate technology on this because, if you've got some pictures, Creative Commons pictures or something that you've taken or, maybe something that you've drawn on an app like Paper for the iPad, shameless plug there, that's my favorite app for the iPad. I could go on and on about that one for days. So you start with some images and you show the end, and it gets people thinking, and it does exactly that same thing. A lot of what Teach Like a Pirate is all about in the first place is just getting the art of presentation into classes, and I think this does that really well. Just the concept of the way that TV shows or the way that movies capture people's attention and draw on suspense and leave you hanging and do all of those things that keep people coming back. And I think Dave says this in the book, and I totally agree with it. As teachers, we never get any sort of training on that. We don't know any best practices on that at all, and that could be huge for our classes if we had just a little bit of theater maybe, or a little bit of the psychology into that, or just some basic practices we could pull into our classrooms. And so by a teacher creating this a wee video presentation like that, or students doing it also and using it as a lead-in maybe to a report they're giving or something, I think that's a really neat way to incorporate that start from the end hook.
I like that, Matt. I was going to add one little quick addition to that. Teachers just don't realize how to bring kids, draw them in.
Right.
How many kids walk up to your classroom door right as the bell's going to ring and they say, "What are we doing today, Mr.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. What your answer is it tells me what type of teacher you are. Because if you start saying, "Oh, we're just going to do vocabulary and continue on the unit," if you say that, no way.
That's how you feel about it, and once they know how you feel about it, then it's over,
Right. The answer should be something like an adventure or come in and let's find out, which was always my favorite. And that always would drive them crazy, but at least they came in the door, very interested.
Right. That playing on that similar idea, I've used the Teach Like a Pirate bag. I think it's called the mystery bag hook, I think is what it's called. And you put something in a bag, and you keep referring to it, and you set it down on the desk, and you just let it sit there. Sometimes I'll pick up the bag and I'll shake it a little bit so they can hear what's in there. And I do this a lot with storytelling. Storytelling is a wonderful, fun way to teach Spanish because we can talk about anything. And I'll incorporate the bag into the story, and they're going, "What in the world is in this bag?" And I'll start to reach my hand in a little bit to get it, and then I'll take it out and I'll change directions, and they'll go, "Why don't you just show me the bag? Show me what's in the bag." It drives them crazy, but they're right there with you,
It sounds kind of like Dan Meyer's 3-act math, where the first act is to get you hooked, and he does that, and then he says as soon as they start asking questions similar to "Why don't you show us what's in the bag?" he said, "Now I know I got them, and I can move on to the second act."
Exactly. Yep.
Well, I was thinking too with the backwards hook. I know Ramsey Musalam, and I'm sure there's a lot of other chemistry teachers that do that, but he'll show them the outcome of an experiment and then say, "Recreate it. Show me, do this," and if they're doing it at home, he'll say, "Send me a video of you doing this. Figure out how I did it and do it," and then they work through it, and I think that's
absolutely, yeah.
Another one I see in here is one of my favorites. What we're on right now is Hangouts.
Yes, absolutely. That is absolutely one of my favorite things to do with classes. And I think I put that one with it's called the Real World Application Hook. So I'm just kind of amazed at how much you can bring the real world and bring people in from all over your country or other parts of the world into your classroom for free, pretty much, as long as you have the devices and as long as you have the internet connection. You can bring all these people just right into your classroom, and it's just a matter of connecting with them and learning how Hangouts work, which is pretty basic. I used this, one of my absolute favorite things that I did last year that my class did, it wasn't just me, and actually it was very little of me, was I connected with a teacher in Spain, in Valencia, Spain, who was an English teacher. And me being a Spanish teacher, we connected by video chat, and we did a mystery location call. So we were trying to guess where in the world each other was, and so we did that, and after that, that was sort of a lead-in to weekly video chat sessions where we would, for half of the class, they would talk in Spanish. My students would be in their second language. And then the second half of the class would switch to English, and the students from Spain would be in their second language. And I mean, that's real world application of what my students were learning in class. And I mean, that transfers over to, practically any content area. I mean, if there's an expert that's studying whatever it is that you're studying, bring them into class with a Hangout. Find a sister class somewhere in the state or country or world that could talk about your content area with your class. I mean, I think if I was a social studies teacher, that it would be fascinating to talk about world history with people from other countries and see what their perspective is on it. And I think that would just be the greatest thing, and it's out there. And there are communities on Google Plus, and if I'm going to use that S word that Troy made fun of me for using earlier, if you're using Skype, sorry I had to say it. There's a great community in the Skype education website where you can connect with teachers and experts also. And I mean, there's just so much that you can do to really bring the world into your classroom with that, I think.
Well, and there's occasional times when I'll connect with a teacher and they'll say they have to use Skype because trying to explain Hangouts to them and get them on there is more trouble than it's worth at that point. So,
right.
And they're developing an online Skype. Apparently, I heard a couple weeks ago they're releasing an online version of Skype that could eventually be available on the Chromebook. So,
that would be great.
But,
I'd be shocked if Google let that happen.
well, Google just wants you on the internet. They don't care how you get there. So, but it's I love Hangout as a tool. I actually have a client that had a lot of field trips, and since funding is being cut back at a lot of schools, they're not getting the number of field trips they had.
Mm-hmm.
People are requesting the modules that lead up to the field trip, but they're not taking the field trip. And so now one of the things I'm working with them on is developing their YouTube channel and how to do Hangouts so that they can start doing the field trip virtually, and because that's really, like you said, it's a way to bring people into the classroom if you can't get out to that particular place.
Yeah, and one of my favorite examples of that comes from right here in Indiana, where Troy and I are. Down in southern Indiana, right near Louisville, there's a school district, and they're not too far away from where the Kentucky Derby is run every year. And the kids will end up watching that on TV and hearing news about it and hearing of people that go there, but so many of them in their school district don't get to do that. So at the end of the school year, they were able to do a virtual field trip to, I think is it Churchill Downs where the Kentucky Derby is held, I think.
I think that's
don't
right.
know. Okay. If not, then we'll get angry tweets or messages or something, and someone will say, "Why don't you know that?" But they were able to get a virtual tour of it. I think they took them back through some of the areas that you wouldn't even get to see if you went to watch the race. And I just thought that was the coolest thing, that they were able to broadcast that to all of their schools, all of their classrooms. It was made available, and it was done as an incentive. I believe it was a behavior incentive, and if I might be wrong, but I think it was corporation-wide. So everybody was apparently happy with the way the school year had gone, and they made this available in those last several weeks when people's attentions are starting to wane, and it was a great learning opportunity. And it those kind of things, I think back to when I was in class, and those when I was a student, those things didn't even exist. And people who scoff at technology as a way to engage kids don't, I think, realize the transformative, the redefinition in the SAMR model, where you're doing things that were previously inconceivable with the technology. It
wasn't a Google Hangout, I'll admit, but we connected with a scientist up in somewhere up in northern Canada that's studying polar bears up in the tundra.
Mm-hmm.
And at the beginning, it could have very well just been a pre-recorded message. they're just talking, and the kids were getting really bored.
Yeah.
And the teacher and I were in the room. We're tweeting the scientists. There was 3 of them on the panel. We were tweeting them, and as soon as one of them mentioned our school's name and answered one of our questions, all the kids like perked up, and and it was, and just that personalization. When I first started doing those kind of things with my students, you really have to train them to realize that person, even though they're not in the room, they're still a person, and you treat them as though they are standing in the room. But if you can personalize it like that, all of a sudden the kids do get really engaged in it.
Sure, absolutely.
I'll turn it around. A creative teacher in our district used Hangouts, a live Hangout, just for her class, but it ended up, because it was broadcast, it became a big deal in our district. She put the camera on a caterpillar that was morphing into a butterfly and left it there live, and everybody was tuning in. It's like, it was so cool. And of course, it's 24/7, and her students could watch it happening, even if they weren't in the class. And it was so fun to watch, and it was just such a creative idea. And we have had people stream that before, but Hangouts just makes it easy, and it's there for the world.
So did she leave it on all the time, or just in the evening when the kids weren't at school?
She turned it on in the evening, and she had a little site where she would remind people, here's tonight's broadcast, basically. So that was really nice.
I know what I'm pitching tomorrow to a couple of teachers.
There you go.
That is a fantastic idea.
And one of the things I love about Google Hangouts is you can record it just like we're doing now. So, if you want to show parents later, we talked with this, expert in whatever and wherever. Here, you can watch it and see what your kids learned today. Or keep it archived for kids who weren't there, or keep it archived for kids who want to go back and say, well, what did that person say? Well, let's go back and watch it. So, there's roundabout ways to record Skype sessions, but Hangouts makes it so easy just to record and archive what you've done.
Yeah, and that's something I've started playing with a little bit just this week. In my classes, so much of what we do in class is the value of it. So whenever I have kids miss things and they come back and they say, well, what work do I need to make up? And I'll say, well, we talked in Spanish for the entire class period a couple of days, and there isn't particular work for you to make, or there's like a little check for understanding, and I was missing out on those opportunities, and now I've started using Hangouts just this week, doing a Hangout on air so that it will record my class, and then we'll take that YouTube video and we'll link to it on my class website. So if I've got kids that have missed class, they're able to do that, and they're able to watch the class. And I mean, it's so easy. It's so easy to start one of these Hangouts. And I'll take a Chromebook and I'll just have the forward-facing camera and I'll just aim it at the front of class, and it'll record the entire class and it'll be out there. And I just have to say, go to the class website, click on yesterday's link, and you can watch the class. It's just that easy.
Well, and Google Glass, when you wear them and do a Hangout, the people see what you're seeing. So we've talked about doing, teacher observations with it, or labs, so that students can watch the lab and not have to make it up, and things like that. So I think Hangouts is going to change quite a bit of things we do in education.
I can't even imagine the things that you could begin to do when you combine Hangouts and Google Glass together. There's got to be so much cool stuff you could do with that.
Yeah, and that's and I think I might be speaking out of turn, but my understanding is they separated Hangouts from Google Plus, which my belief is that means you will be able to get them on the Google Apps domain without having to enable Google Plus. Could be wrong, but I know that's been a frequent request of teachers to Google in Education is we want to use Hangouts, but we don't want our kids to have Google Plus. How can we do that? So
I see. Yeah.
But yeah, you've got a lot of good. We don't want to give everything away. We want people to come to your website and
Right.
and read them. So tell us, how can they find you? Where's your website? Where do you blog at? How are you on Twitter? Things like that.
Well, I'm glad you asked. My blog is Ditch That Textbook, which is at ditchthattextbook.com, and all you need to do is go to the website there. If it's not on the front page, a link to the post about this ebook, The Digital Pirate, then all you have to do is do a simple search on the site for Digital Pirate, and it'll come right up. And it's free. I blog there Mondays and Thursdays about creative teaching and integrating educational technology and that kind of thing. I am on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @jmattmiller. That's like the letter J, Matt, M-A-T-T, Miller. I'm also on Google Plus a decent amount. I'm at I think it's plus Matt Miller 16. It's us people that have the common names, and Joan can probably sympathize with that one. Is all the good Twitter handles and everything are all taken up by the time you get there. So those are probably the best places to reach me.
Well, and I'll say I should have probably mentioned this at the beginning, but if you're viewing, then obviously you've viewed this on YouTube, and it's great that you were here. If you are listening on audio, it's a couple weeks from now, because EdReach is doing some major upgrades, and so I can't post the audio of this for probably 2 to 3 more weeks. Hopefully sooner, but possibly not. So for those of you who are regular listeners and viewers and are wondering why this is not showing up in your iTunes feed, that's why. It will, but just a couple weeks from now. So, but Matt, thank you for your time. I think what you provide is very valuable to the listeners, and I also like this book, and I like that it's the right price. So.
Right, exactly. You can't beat the price.
So thank you for coming on and giving us your time.
It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. Thanks.
It was great to meet Matt.
Yeah.
And I should also mention that Matt is going to be going to the Google Teacher Academy here in a couple weeks in Austin. So we'll be adding another Indiana educator to the Google Certified Teacher.
Mm-hmm. And there are, I believe, 2 of us from Indiana, so I think that brings our entire grand total to 5 Hoosiers that are Google certified teachers after this. So
there's 5 active. There's 1 that has disappeared. We don't know if they're still active or still in Indiana or still what. But yeah. So
okay.
So we say 5. There's 5 active that we know of. So.
Sure.
So, and then to the viewer or listeners, we'll be back again soon with some more great topics.